I want transcripts as well. We want transcripts in English. And if the transcripts are any good, I'll send them to you.
Great.
But we'll see. Sometimes the transcripts seriously are not worth.
Oh, really?
No, they say things and you just go, what did it even think of? Now let me just back up and just start off by saying I talked to Emma and I was saying I've been working on the online conscious leadership program, and I've done a little bit of adaptation around the why piece of work that I've done in the program. And at the same time, she was saying that the two of you are, part of your follow-up is also to do this work with your team. So I just thought it was a really good opportunity for us to come together. And it's not so much me to lead it, it's more for all of us to sort of work together in a way that hopefully, this is what you want, that you leave feeling like you've got a real clear idea about how you're going to do this work with your teams. And you go that next level after what we did in the Conscious Leaders Mastermind Program. How does that sound? Are we all on the same page?
Definitely.
Yes. Excellent. So my role today is not necessarily to give you loads more information. I don't perceive it in that way. I think it's more, as I said, to make sure you're on the right course.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to add a couple of adaptations that I've done from the work that I did on the online Conscious Leadership Program and also the Conscious Leaders Mastermind Program. So a really great place for us to start is, are you all okay with us going for an hour today?
Yes.
Is that okay? And I'll be mindful of the time. Emma, if you can prod me if I look like I've gone off in my cerebral mode. And a great place for us to start really is, where are you up to? Tell me where you're up to, what you're thinking in relation to how you want to tackle this with your team.
Well, Vanessa and I met a few days ago just to plan our planning day on Monday, which will be great. So we were thinking that we wanted to prime our team first in regards to them thinking about their why. So we just didn't want them to come in where we're, giving them all this information. We really wanted to prime them. So we sent them a link to the Simon Simak video for them just to have that introduction.
Lovely.
And they're going to bring with them their ideas about their why and their thinking. So just to get them started.
Yeah.
And on the day, Emma agreed that she would have a talk to the team about their why and really get them thinking about that. So that's where we're up to at the moment.
Excellent. And how long have you got to go with the team around this on your PD day?
Maybe, Vanessa, how long did we say?
We didn't actually come down to a time frame, but we do have the whole day, which there are other topics that we do want to look into, but we're initially starting off with the rules of engagement initially to start off with. And we've taken lots of ideas of how you've presented that to us, and then going straight into the whys. As what Nadia said, that we've just sent some information around this. So in terms of times, we actually haven't given too much thought, to be honest.
No, we haven't. But we do have other topics that we want to cover, but we just thought that why would be a fantastic start as an introduction to the other topics.
So what are the other topics that you're doing?
It's mostly pedagogy and slow pedagogy.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, and just talking about the Inspire conference that we all attended.
And this day on Monday is just with the room leaders, Sarah. So it's sort of an entry point. So we wanted to clarify and do the why work with them first before then branching out to the rest of the team, which is a day in July.
And the benefit to this is 4 out of the 7 staff, they have actually done their whys with you, Sarah.
Right.
So, that's a little bit of a bonus for us. So we've just have the other 3 staff. We're hoping that with probably 7 of us who have gone through this with you, including, Emma, Nadia and I, we're hoping that we could really shape that before we, sort of get the wider team involved in this.
Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, it'll be a great conversation. That's a lovely size group to work with. And as you say, the fact that they've done the work, or the majority of them have already started that work, that process, will help the ones that haven't.
Yep.
But I think it will also strengthen what you get out of it too, like in terms of I think that's lovely.
Yep.
Was there anything, Emma, you wanted to add?
No, just I think those days we see them as more of a conversation, so we don't assign times as much, because we do really want to sort of go with the flow, and we do have, I guess, the bones of what we'd like to cover, but we're very responsive to what comes up, and just want to, you know, want it to be a productive conversation rather than us cutting them short and saying, sorry, next topic.
Yeah, that's right. And we want them to be really reflective, so that always takes time.
Yeah, and go deeper is what we're aiming for. Yeah.
So you're really, not that I know that much about the slow pedagogy, but you're really mirroring the slow pedagogy in the PD that you're doing at the beginning, really, aren't you? You're actually really you're walking your talk, really. Like that.
Yeah. And that's what came up at our last leadership meeting too. We were just reflecting on particularly policy review, and we were saying that, you know, we've got 50 policies to review, and it's this rushed process, and and we're talking about slow pedagogy on one hand, but we're not living it in the way that we're doing some of our more administrative type tasks. So we're actually doing a bit of a review of that in light of all this as well, to try and just slow down and dive deeper across the board.
Oh, I love that. You know, I love that. I love that, because that's also from my perspective, that's them actually experiencing what you're talking about. And to me, that's the best teacher, that you like, if people, as they say, it's not what you say, it's how you make people feel. It's for you to take them through that process in that way, then you can then draw on that when you start talking about slow pedagogy, because it gives you the examples of what you're talking about, but also, and how did that make you feel? And then from a neurological point of view, what did that give you? Like, because that slowing down and making sure people are primed and making sure people are fully engaged means they're not only accessing their own thought processes, but you're accessing it collectively, like from a neurological point of view, because you're much more likely to be co-regulated. And the brain science sort of says when you're in that level 3 conversation and there's not necessarily clear outcomes, you don't have perceived outcomes, then the brain will actually, it'll work at a higher level. You're accessing your prefrontal cortex, wisdom and higher level. And you've got such an amazing team of beautiful thinkers. They just think so much and so deeply that I'm really excited to see what you come out of this. And then also, as you're you know, really beautifully doing, is you're modeling to them the experience that you then want them to model with the team. So it's, you know, it passes down, which I love.
Yep. And also, Sarah, we want them to understand that this is a journey that we're all going on together. So it's not just something that, you know, we're giving them all this information that we want them to take on. We want to work together and co-construct. So I hope that message comes across to them as well.
Well, you're giving them that experience of that, aren't you? So that in terms of how you're giving them that, how are you actually going to give that to them, do you think? How can you deliver that? I'm trying not to lead you.
I think we have an agenda, so we've got topics that we are going to talk about, and we're going to have small groups, and we're going to have reflective questions that they will be able to sit in small groups and reflect on, and then come back and talk about it. So we're hoping that will be a good process.
Beautiful, beautiful. So with your the questions that you're going to be using for the 3 of you, for your role as well, I would really encourage you, because your mind knows where you want them to get to. But I think it's really important in that sort of that organic process where they're starting to go through the questions. It's really helpful for you to have that real beginner's mindset if you can. And your role really is to come up with lots of discovery questions. And that's to step into their shoes to then go, well, tell me more about what you mean by that. Or I'm really curious. You've said that was a really important part in your leadership, but tell me more about that, because the more you ask those sort of more expansive questions on top of the sort of standard questions, the more you'll help them dig deeper into their own perception and their reality.
Yep.
And it's really easy for us when we're in the process to have, and this is a subconscious thing, to have a perceived outcome that we're heading people towards.
Yep.
And move people to that before they've done the discovery work in their thinking. So if you can, when in the structure of the time that you have together, I'd really allocate quite a substantial amount of time with that, because they'll want to get to the end point, because that's so as you know, the brain wants certainty. So you're putting them in a place of uncertainty, saying, let's explore, let's discover, and naturally they're going to be going, okay, well, we've done that now, can we now get to the next bit?
Right.
Your job really is to try and slow that right down. And I love the fact that you're breaking people into small groups, because that's where those real depth of the conversations will come. And again, you're modeling by just going, can I just slow you down? I see where you've got to with this, but how did you get there in your thinking? Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think, as you were saying that, Sarah, you know, when we were doing that with you, you actually had lots of questions for us, like just even talking about our leadership and talking about the timeline that you got us to do, you know, and then we were doing it, but then when you got to the final end, it all just made sense. But it's, and clearly now it's because we've gone through that process of all those questions, all those experiences that we were able to do, like as a group, but also on our own. It's actually landed really well. And I agree with you with what you're saying. Like, I think we've got the end point and we know how fantastic it is. But that journey, it's just great that you reminded us that they don't have the same understanding at this stage because it's so new to them. Yeah.
And also, not in all cases, and tell me if I'm wrong with this, that they're in a different stage to their leadership than you as well. So they're not as established leaders as you. And culturally, they want to get it right. And so you're actually, what you're culturally, I would really encourage you to do, and this is sort of like an NLP thing, you sort of almost want to scramble people's brains in the most respectful way. It's like you want to throw in questions that there aren't right or wrong answers, if that makes sense. And you want to, like for those younger staff, you might want to forward project them as well as backward project them. Do you know what I mean? In your questioning. So where do you see yourself in 20 years' time? Like, that's a real huge question for somebody who's in their 20s. And it's not
at any stage of life.
Well, yeah, it is, but especially in 20s. Do you know what I mean? No, you're right, Emma. Maybe not quite 20 years. But do you know what I mean? Like, do it in alignment with your team and what you naturally feel is right for them. But the purpose behind those questions isn't necessarily the answer. It's to loosen up their thinking. And the more you do that, like, because neurologically they've got neuro pathways that go, well, this is the way we process information. When I'm asked a question, this is what I need to do. I'm not necessarily saying everybody's the same, but particularly where there's a cultural leaning towards getting things right and getting to the answer, and also that you're the experts, they're not, is to really shake that up as much as you can. And you might want to do a bit of pre-planning about that in terms of making it more contextual for your particular staff and service. Any thoughts about that, Emma?
I think that's helpful, very helpful. And I think it also ties in nicely with what we're trying to do around the slow pedagogy. So the tendency is to sort of rush through and to try and get an endpoint and to wrap up a project or an experience where we're really asking them, we're disrupting that pattern of thinking. So I think this is a really natural lead into that. And we've talked about sort of, sitting in that sort of messy, uncomfortable place in the middle, and that's actually where we want them to be, and that is uncomfortable. So it's, I guess, changing the narrative around the value of being there rather than seeing that as a negative thing, which is my perception that they do, is to really, get them to embrace that and see the joy and the excitement and the and I guess also the productivity of being in that space that really opens your mind up in different ways.
And if you're of the mindset, all of you are of the mindset when you go in, is that we may not get there. We, like, if you go in going, this is the journey and we're happy to be led by you, you may find that you have to slow it right down. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's really helpful for you to go in excuse me, in that way, because that's what I did with the CLM. I didn't know how far I was really going to get you, or how those statements were really going to be. Now, I'm fortunate in the sense that I know I'm getting to work with you for another 10 months. So it's like I knew it wasn't stopping there. As you know, it's not stopping from a different perspective. The other thing that's sprung to mind is whether there's some visual activities you can do. So what was coming to mind is, you know, we tend to be linear thinking, and especially, you know, you've got quite a few academic people on your team that are very academic in their thinking, as to whether you could create some visual either metaphors or activities that get them to think about that sort of messy composition of ideas. And
any examples you can give us, Sarah?
Well, no, what came to mind, I have never even talked about this before, so this is us regulating in the like in terms of us actually doing the level 3 conversation together, is we're creating this together. So what came to mind as I was talking was painting, an abstract painting, like a blob. Like you might put a blob in the middle, and then on my piece of paper I might put a purple blob, or I might paint a square, which demonstrates we might be asked to do the same thing, but we're all going to come at this in a slightly different way. And what my picture looks like is going to look totally different from yours. But also the questions I ask you are going to influence the shapes that you put down, the colours that you put down. So it's sort of demonstrating that layer of our perceptions are all different, our processes are different. And you could do that. You could, you know, in the CLM, when I said, draw a picture of yourself as a leader, and everyone got stuck. And then I said, okay, draw a head, because then everyone was gone, like everyone was okay. You could do a similar maybe thing like that, where you start off with some instruction just to loosen people's thinking. And it could be around the why. Like you could say, what does why purpose look like as a picture? Like, I'm just making these things up. You come up with your own ideas.
Okay.
You give them like an instructional idea of creating a painting. And you've got such a small group, you could do this and have so much fun. But then the second picture they paint, you let them go. You don't give them instructions. And then they've got two completely different pictures that are created in two completely different ways. And that's the metaphor of what you're wanting them to do in terms of unpacking their why. There's no right or wrong way. They'll find their own way. And in that, you could say, was it more helpful having the questions, or did you like it once you relaxed, for you just letting your brain go where it needed to go? So you just sort of, you're being quite creative with how you're approaching it. And then also at the end, they've got something really tangible, but it's not in words. And you've got some wordsmiths in your group, people who are very articulate. which is great. I'm not, there's no absolutely no judgment, criticism, but it's just trying to get a different part.
I like that.
What are you thinking, Emma? Because you're always so creative with ideas.
Yeah, well, I feel like I am, but I don't enjoy that type of thing myself, so I wouldn't necessarily have thought of that. So I have that sort of resistance. If anyone ever says to me I have to draw or paint, there's an immediate block, even though in some ways I do, have a creative brain, and, I do talk in metaphors a lot. But I think that could have some power within our group, and it's also just that, breaking down the barriers a bit and letting go, and everyone's
having a bit of fun too.
To that kind of
You're
experience.
Great to talk to about this, because you've got that natural level of resistance. So when you're planning it, think about it through your lens. You harness that, because that's beautiful, because it's like, well, would that work for everybody? And if it, what's an alternative way you could approach it? Do you know what I mean? Maybe you could give people the option to use words, or like, your team better than anyone. Like, I knew when I did that activity, I knew people were going to struggle. But I wanted also to give them the experience that they could move through the struggle and actually enjoy it. And again, if you were to think your leadership team might ask your team, it's good for them to go through these things too, so that they experience the resistance, because we're asking people to do things all the time that they don't feel comfortable with, aren't we?
Yep.
And I think there's huge reflection that comes from that, that you can't get as deeply if you don't experience it yourself. So
that's right.
There's power in that on so many levels. Yeah.
So I just want to be sorry, Emma.
No, I was just going to say, I was thinking about offering several different mediums, so that people might have a level of comfort with, clay or Play-Doh or pencils, or, paint or something like that. But to have that sort of creative element built in could be really useful.
And like in one CLM, we did the vision boards. You could do pictures as well. That's another way of giving people representations of ideas. You know what I mean? Other way. I just want to summarize that in terms of the purpose behind doing that isn't the outcome. Getting people to loosen their thinking. And to get them to think at a higher level thinking. Which we're so used to doing it in a certain way. We're so, even at work, we're required, if we're asked to do something, we write it down, don't we? We have to formulate it. So that could be that could add a real fun element to the day too.
I think this is wonderful, Sarah, because what we're trying to do in that second part of the session of the topics that's going to follow is about pedagogy, and how we actually want children and teachers not to have an outcome of the learning. It's actually about the purpose and the process. So exactly what you said, I was like getting goosebumps in terms of we need to actually learn how to do that as well as leaders. And it's about the high order thinking that you're talking about. That's where we want children to go, and we're trying to do it on children. But if we, as you said, Emma, as well, if you don't experience that, it's difficult to teach that to others.
And it's where all the magic happens, like it absolutely happens for adults as much as it does children. In some ways more, because we're so constrained. Do you know what I mean? So we've got so many limiting beliefs piled on top of over the years that restricts our ability to step into our whole selves. And what better way of doing it when you're talking about people's purpose, because it's it's inbuilt in us. Like, it's the thing that you want to ignite that in your team, because that once that's ignited, their motivation, their clarity and their focus just skyrockets. Absolutely. I'm so excited to see what you create.
I've got so many ideas going through my head at the moment. Just thinking about Cabarita, what a beautiful space we have that, you know, we can use all of those natural materials. I'm so excited.
Oh, you're going back there.
We're going back to Cabarita. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had such a good experience there last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Any other ideas, Nadia, that have just popped in that you need to share?
No, just those natural materials. I can just see people going off into, you know, different spaces on their own and just being creative and thinking. So yeah, I'm excited.
I want to be a fly on the wall. So that's beautiful to know you're in that location. So what I think is really important for us to, I probably should have started with this, but I worked around the wrong way, is first of all how you're regulating yourselves before you go into the space. Because I suspect, well, if you're anything like me, you'd be so excited. And you know what's in store, and it's going to be really important to regulate that so that you're really grounded, so that you can stay in that space of, we're curious, we have no idea what's going to come out of this. We're holding the space for them, and we're navigating our sense of excitement or maybe frustration if people don't get what we're talking about when we share it. Like, it's going to be a process for you to really do the work before, and then as you enter in, if you can get there, which I know you will before everybody does, that you individually and then collectively come together. And almost, you know, like you see the soccer teams do the come together, you almost need to do something like that, where you're like, we're on and we're really grounded, we're welcoming people as they come in, and we're really welcoming them and seeing them. You know, this is, and I know you naturally do this really well as a team, but I invite you to do this really consciously. To slow that right down in terms of, if you can have everything ready so that when everybody arrives, you can be, and you notice I don't necessarily always do this, but I do try in events to make sure everything's ready before. That's one of the reasons why I held you all back at the CLM and wouldn't let you in, is I knew everyone was there, but we weren't ready for you. And then when we let you in, I was there to meet you and greet you. I may not have done it in quite the way that I'm expressing, but that's the way to do it in the sense of really being conscious and calm. Or if not all three of you are there, that you've got different roles where one of you is doing the greeting and the other one's making sure that, you know, people know where to put their bags and that they feel held in the space when they come in. And that whole self-regulation moving into co-regulation, which is what you want everyone to do as a whole group, is so important. So be aware of you doing your own self-regulation and then thinking about that co-regulation. What energy do you want in the room? You know, and I'm sure you know your team well enough to know the people that might be a little bit more anxious than others, and, you know, use your intuition to just check in on people. And, you know, invariably you've got all the different personalities. So you'll get the person that comes in that's had a drama before they arrived. You'll have the person that comes in and just sits down quietly, and you're not even sure whether they really want to be there. You know, you'll have the whole, as we always do in every group. And so you might want to prepare beforehand, like who's doing what, that's supporting who. And if you've got anyone in your team that, you know, I mean, we've all got trauma, but if there's anyone in your team who, you know, has either recently, you know, had some big thing going on, or you know that there's some trauma, to really be mindful of how how one of you is co-regulating with them. Like, make sure you're you know, somebody's sitting next to them, and that you're mindfully really calm and holding the space for them. And you can even do things like, you know, make that more explicit in terms of if you need any additional support, depending on what's going on with people. But as a group also to be very clear, stuff comes up and you're doing quite deep work with people. So, you know, we have a sense of duty and responsibility to just sort of say, you know, we're here, there's anything you need. And you notice, like, I think I did it the last CLM, you know, if you need to get up and go out, can you just let us know? Don't just get up and walk out, because then we're going to be wondering whether you're okay. And so those kind of ground rules are really important.
Okay.
Have you got anyone in there that's tricky?
We've probably got quite a reserved personality who doesn't comfortably speak up, even in small groups. So I think that would be one to watch.
Yeah.
So you could preempt that. I'm mindful that we're recording this, so I know we have to be careful what we're saying, but just like, I think it's helpful with those people to prime them before and to give them a clear sense of what is being expected of them before. So if you do expect them to contribute verbally, like in terms of to actually share, as you know, in whatever way you think is appropriate, is to actually say, you know, this is a small group and I know you sometimes find it difficult. Is there anything I can do to support you? Because the expectation is you do. Like, you might say, can I always go last in the group because I need more time to think about it? So just give them some strategies. Okay. Honor it. And the other thing you can say is, if you need more time to think, just say, I need more time to think, and we'll keep moving around, but we will come back to you. So there's always an expectation you will need to speak, but you know, we'll do it at the pace that you feel most comfortable with. And lots of praise for those people that find it difficult.
I think the other thing just to be conscious of for us is that this is the first time we've had a combined room leaders planning day. So normally the centres do this work independently. So just navigating that dynamics, because they are different teams as we'd expect. And so I think structuring the time so that there's time that they can collaborate and speak together in their separate centres, but also having that cross opportunity, I think, is really valuable. Get to know some wider perspectives and shared experiences working with different age groups, etc.
So from a priming them perspective, I'm not saying I'm right with this, but there will be a heightened level of, neurologically, this is neurologically, there'll be a heightened level of distrust, because if they're communicating with people they ordinarily communicate with, and also, you know, you as leaders, that everybody knows Emma, but the leader sort of that's in your room, Nadia, won't know Vanessa. So there'll be a level of, how safe am I in this space? Even though people obviously feel safe, but there's still neurologic that sense of, are you going to put me on the spot, or you know, like me, or whatever people's, you know, things are going on in their minds. So you might want to think about doing a warm-up activity where there's something that is just literally for warm-up. There's no outcome focus apart from building trust and connection with people. And that could be sort of getting to know somebody in the room that you don't know, or you know, what do you not know about me? Just giving people an opportunity just to loosen up their thinking. And then the other thing, as much as you're creating a loose plan, this is the tricky one, you also want to prime them with what they can expect. So you might put like a loose agenda, like you said, Emma, with no timing against it, but it's roughly clear what you're going to be getting as an outcome. And in that, what the expectation of their involvement is. And then more, if you can do that before the day, and then if you've got any questions, then that just means, even if some people may not even read it, and that's okay, they're not the ones you're worried about. Do you know what I mean? It's the people who will read it, and they read, because it's like it's the equivalent of having a safety blanket. If I feel okay, I probably will read it in the morning of, and I'm fine. But if I'm somebody who's a bit anxious, I'm going to want to be prepared, and that means I've got my safety blanket when I know I go in. And that just helps lowers people's cortisol down.
I think we've had a couple of combined staff meetings, so the full teams together, and on reflection, you see that in the way that people present within those meetings. So for me, it's while we've sat in a big circle, they've still sat predominantly with their colleagues from the centre. There hasn't been a lot of cross, and the only ones that have crossed over are casuals who've worked across both centres and have that level of comfort. So yeah, it's quite interesting to reflect back on that, and how we probably could do more of that sort of warm up, getting to know you things before launching in.
Definitely.
Even though, you know, time is precious in those meetings, and we are trying to maximise every minute.
Yeah.
And imposter syndrome is alive and living in all of us. So you put a group of leaders together who are very efficient, you know, effective leaders who have a persona of high competence, which you do with your leaders. You put people together, and I've seen it so many times. I mean, all the leaders I work with who are highly competent leaders, they've all got imposter syndrome. So that's really, not everybody, but it's a human condition.
Yep.
So it's really important when you're priming people to be thinking about that in relation to how are we reducing a level of resistance or lack of trust, so that people can show up in all of their vulnerability. And it's okay for them not to be seen as a professional leader in moments. Do you know what I mean? And I think the fastest route to that is you doing it. It's you mirroring to them how you want them to show up. So you'll notice in my training, I joke a lot about myself. I sometimes put myself down quite a bit. I do it very strategically because it gives people permission to do the same thing. And be mindful of that, because again, you've got leaders who set very, very high standards for themselves, like very high standards. So for them to say something that might be seemed as a bit silly would be really impacting their level of confidence. Like it would be something. So it's just mindful to think about that. Just how you're loosening people up and giving them permission to relax and be okay with.
We had a powerful example of that this week. So I've been doing an aspiring leaders program with council, and we had our third session this week, and Evan came and spoke. So he's one of our exec who's very competent, and he spoke very vulnerably about his early career and the mistakes that he made, and it just really shifted the tone and conversation within the room afterwards, because he actually spoke about how he used to almost make fun of people who made mistakes in a way of trying to get them to improve. And, you know, there was a bit of a shock horror knowing him now and his leadership style, but he felt that was a really important share to show the growth, you know, that you don't have necessarily those skills and knowledge early on, and that it can develop. And so, yeah, there's so much power in that, isn't there?
Yeah. So you might want to create a story that your younger group would relate to. Do you know what I mean? In terms of that actually demonstrates somebody who has done similar to what they might do. You know, Mary in the online conscious leadership program that I talk about, Mary.
Yep.
Well, Mary's partly somebody I worked with. She's not fully somebody I worked with, but I encased the general field that of educators, educational leaders, and leaders feel like in that story. And so many people go, that's me, like that's just me. And it just again creates that link. Yeah. So you could do that, something like that at the beginning, although if they've heard that I do it, you might want to do it in a slightly different way. Do you hear my washing machine?
Can you hear the motorbike next door to me?
No, and I'll close the door. Can you?
I can't hear anything.
No, I can't either.
Only my noise.
The joys of working from home. Any questions?
I think you've given us a lot to think about, and I thought we had planned really well, but I need to go back. We need to go back and do some more work, Vanessa. But it's good.
But it's that process, isn't it? That
Yeah.
The journey's, it's never done. There's no end point. We're constantly evolving. And if we weren't, that's where I see probably an issue. Yeah, it's exciting.
And, you know, I've been doing this for years. So, you know, this is like an onion. I've added layers to what I do over the years, and it's just through experience of working with people as well. And I think if you're looking, just keep looking through the lens of, you know, how safe and what level of trust people are at. Again, from that self-regulation and co-regulation piece is really important to keep doing the barometer check-ins, like in the room. And you could, one of you could take that role on for the day, is just, you know, can you just take a lead on that and then feedback? Like, so again, when I do training, if I do any sort of co-facilitation, I will always break and say, how do you think it's going? Is there any areas that you think I need to improve? Is there, do you know what I mean? Like, is there anyone we need to check in with? So you've got, you know, there's three can do that. But if you've got one person that's just doing that throughout, and again, people feel that in the room. You've so got this. You've so got this.
So in terms of the actual why, Sarah, because when we were chatting, you're talking about you developing some new questions. Is there any guidance around that?
I have a nice little document which I was going to send to you, but I thought I will hold fire on it until we've talked. So I was telling Emma this. I'm trying to put together, trying being the operative word because it's a huge task. I'm trying to put together like a detailed journal for the online conscious leadership program for each module. And I just happen to have done module 2 starting with you. Like everything, it's evolving and changing, and I've expanded it. And what I've done is I've slightly adapted the questions, and I've also started to put information about how it links in with the national quality standards. So I'll send you this because it's got like the intro, a lot of it you've already gone through twice now with me. Actually some 3 times, some of you with me. But I still suggest people watch the Simon Sinek TED Talk because it's really, really good. And I've still got the reflective questions in terms of why do you think understanding your, sorry, not those ones, the what gives you a sense of purpose. I've got those. You can change those. Please feel free to. They're like loosening up people in their thinking, but they're definitely, I'm sure you can come up with better questions. I have put in there 3 questions to ask, which might be too late now for you, but and again, I'll send you this document. 3 questions to ask to reflect on after watching Simon Sinek, and they are: why do you think understanding your why, your deeper purpose and motivation is essential for effective leadership? So it's just getting them to reflect on that. You hear my dog?
No.
Good. But it really cuts out the noise.
Yeah, it does.
So much happening here. Sinek explains how great leaders inspire action rather than simply managing people. How might having a clear sense of purpose influence the way you lead and engage your team? And as you think about Simon Sinek's message, what feels most relevant or inspiring to you about the importance of understanding your why? How could this insight guide your leadership journey towards moving forward? So that's really partly because I think people watch it, and without the questions, they're not picking up information that you want to take out of it. So you've got that for another exercise for people. And then rather than people creating the statement, the Simon Sinek statement, I've created a process called the Clarity Compass process, which is very similar, but it's early childhood specific. So I still get them to go through the questions. The additional bit, which I think you've already picked up on, is I get them to do a leadership timeline activity, and I outline that in here. So you've got that if you want to refer to that in the way that I do. And then I get them to create a Clarity Compass statement, which I like that because it means you can actually talk about, are you in line with your compass? Like, are you away, or are you, it's again got a nice metaphor to it. So I'm just going to read what I've got in here, and then you can ask me questions. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So it says, now that you've reflected on your leadership journey, so we've taken them through the questions, we've taken them through the Simon Sinek, they've done the leadership timeline, and your answers to the rediscovering your purpose questions, it's time to put it all together. So the clarity compass statement has 3 parts. So the first part is your belief, why you lead. What do you believe is most important in your leadership? What difference do you want to make for children, families, and your team? So it's very specific in relation. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
I like it.
It points them in the direction rather than inferring it. So an example could be, I believe every child deserves to feel safe, valued, and inspired to thrive. So the second question is guiding principles, how you lead. What values, strengths, and approaches do you consistently bring to your leadership? So example, there could be building trusting relationships, promoting collaboration, encouraging reflective practice. And then the third one is tangible impact, what you do. What actions do you take to fulfill your belief and to make a difference? Example, leading professional development, providing mentorship, and creating supportive spaces for growth and learning. And then you combine all of those answers and you start them with, I believe, I do this by, and this approach guides me as a leader. And then you write what it is. So I put 2 examples here, pulling all of that together. I believe every child deserves an inclusive environment where their strengths are recognised and their voices are heard. I do this by supporting educators to build strong relationships, understand diverse needs, and apply inclusive practices. This approach guides me as I create training resources, provide coaching, and cultivate a culture of kindness and growth. So it's very along the lines, but it's slightly different. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And the other one is, I believe that effective leadership begins with authenticity, clarity, and trust. I do this by encouraging reflective practice, promoting open communication, and providing practical guidance. This approach guides me as I deliver training, coach leaders, and model leadership practices that inspire others to lead with intention and integrity. Any thoughts?
I love it. I think it reads more clearly for educators. So it's that, there's a bit more sort of synergy there.
It translates it over, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then I've just got, at the end, it just congratulates people for creating the clarity compass. So I'll send you that. And again, please feel free to adapt, change, do whatever you want with it. But it's just it's a guideline, and that's what now, well, hopefully the next program I run, it will all be incorporated in. So they'll have a whole document which is sort of outlines each module, has areas where they'll be able to put answers to their questions in. But I'll send you that, and you're more than welcome to just use that in its entirety or adapt and change it as you see fit.
Okay. Sarah, did you say it's a bit late to send them some questions now? Is that what you said before, or did I misunderstand?
You're doing it tomorrow, aren't you?
Monday.
Oh no, or maybe not. Well, I don't know how much you want to put them under the pump.
I'm thinking we could actually do it with them.
Okay.
On the day.
That would be a good activity.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what you could do to prime everyone is say, these are the questions we're going to go through together. And those people who are very studious, I know you have quite a few of them on your team, will watch it and have the answers probably ready for you. But their answers, again, don't take their answers on surface value, just like that generates such a beautiful conversation, leadership in early childhood, and understanding your why.
Okay.
And then the last bit of our conversation is how you wrap it all up, and then what happens next. Where are you up to with planning that?
We've added that to our agenda, Vanessa, didn't we? That we wanted to, you know, hold the team accountable. So get them to talk to us about what they loved best about the day or what they've taken from it. Maybe 2 things that they can bring back to the service that they're going to talk to their team about. So really giving that accountability is important.
Brilliant.
And it's also the springboard. This will be these are our guinea pigs for the why work with the wider team that we'll do later. So it's going to be that, you know, that opportunity for gaining their feedback and reflections too on how it landed with them, what tweaks we can make, and really involving them in that next rollout.
And sorry.
No.
Before giving them those questions, those accountability questions, could you start off by asking them how they want to be held accountable?
Yes.
And so I understand you want to lead with the outcomes you want, but just sort of see how many of those they come up with anyway, because that induces more buy-in if it comes.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
But they might come up. You've got such a creative group. They might come up with things you haven't thought about.
Yeah, definitely.
And celebrate.
Yeah.
Because this is like a huge piece of work. It's huge. And I can pretty much guarantee, I mean, obviously I know that the majority of them have gone through it, but they won't have done it before.
No.
So this is like, in terms of taxing people's brains, putting people into an uncomfortable zone, like it's a big achievement to take people through. And I tell you, the work that we did in the CLM and watching those statements coming up is so emotional.
Yep.
And I'm sure you'll feel it with your team, because it's the essence of who people are.
Yep. And I think it's really going to build our relationship with them as well. And hopefully then with us. So yeah, there's so many benefits.
Vanessa, were you going to say something? I think I interrupted you.
I did. What was it? Wrapping up the session. I think like everyone would sort of have a different stance on it, because I know even for personally going through this, I needed time to process all of this information. And last week we had the leadership meeting and I just had little questions pop up. But I was able to sort of share it in a safe space with, you know, Emma and Nadia, which, you know, I'm very comfortable with. But that might not resonate to everybody. So I think exactly what you said, I think, you know, maybe getting it from them will be great, to know that everyone might be a little bit different. Some might need it as a follow-up next week, or some might just need time to sort of process.
Yep.
So yeah, I was just going to share my part of how we sort of reflected last week as a leadership team about the whys, and I just had a few questions like, I wonder if I am, you know, resonated with my whys, but it was just questions that got me thinking, but then just to share it, sort of got it off my chest. So I just wanted to share that part.
I think that's great, because it really demonstrates it's a deep process and that we all process information differently. And, you know, if it's your experience, it will be relatable to somebody in the group. Do you know what I mean? And so your experiences are really good all the time. If you can draw on your experience of you going through it, and it validates things for them. So if there are things that you felt really uncomfortable about or really challenged with, share it, because the chances are somebody in the group will have felt that too in some way. So I love that. And finally, I think, you know, going back to what you're saying, this is a journey, and I'm sure, you know, if you looked at your first why statement to your statement now, it probably looks very different. And if you were to do it in 6 months' time, it'll look different again. And I think that is a real indicator that we don't stand still, that we're growing and evolving all of the time. And that's what you want to engender with your team too, is that this isn't, because there is a little bit of a thing around, it's a statement, so it's fixed. That's the bit I think we have to be mindful of, that we don't you know, because again, we're in this world where it's tick box, I've done that, moved on to the next thing, I've done that, moved on to the next thing, and what we want people to do is go, that for now. But
well, that's the beauty in the compass, isn't it? Because the compass is different no matter where you stand.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Emma, you always do it. I say she should be in marketing.
The metaphor brain.
It's always gold. Can you say that again? Can I put that in my document? Lovely.
Of course.
I think that's lovely. So is my job done for the day? Have I filled your brain?
You sure have.
Ideas. You've done really well at pulling this together. I think you're going to have, and I love that you're just doing it with your leadership team first. I think that's really wise.
And like my gratitude and hats off to Nadia and Vanessa, who I let them take the lead on this, and they've done an absolutely amazing job of pulling, I think, so many elements of what we've covered in just thinking about leadership consciously together. So all the priming and the accountability and the rules of engagement was all from them. So well done.
Well
awesome.
done. Are you all good with the rules of engagement?
Yes, we're going to do it together with the team. So we want to get their ideas. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well done. I'm so excited to hear how they come out. I'd love if anyone's happy to share, we could put a couple of their examples, take mine out and put a couple of their examples in that document, would be really nice. As the leadership journey, if there's any drawings of leadership journeys that people are
I still have to get mine to you, Sarah. I wrote that down.
Well, no, because it's also, if there's one from a director and then one from a room leader, that's amazing, because you obviously their lines might be slightly different. So
and as we're going through that, I was thinking, because some of them, it might not be leadership, it might just be journey of their career or their pathway to being an educator. So yeah, just that sort of shift in thinking.
The way I get around that, Emma, is I think everybody's leaders.
That's
and so we agree.
Definitely.
Yeah. So for people who don't identify as a leader, that's how I they're all leaders. So before we wrap up, I just want to get you to acknowledge yourself for something that you've created out of this process, or something that you've realized, or something, a new thought that you've had.
For me, it's just a reminder to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, particularly around that sort of creative approach, and knowing that there's so much value in that for others, just because it's not something that I'd naturally be inclined to do, to step out of my comfort zone in terms of things like that.
Beautiful.
I think for me, really looking at the different personalities in the group on Monday, and really being conscious of educators that I need to spend a bit more time with, or to be able to support them. That was something that I didn't think about before.
For me, it's just really taking it slow, like understanding that they don't have what we know. And I think I'm so excited to share, but really to take that process slow and to make that safe space for them so they can share. And, some of the examples that you gave, like, maybe do exercises with them to share a little piece about themselves. And I think those ways, and I'm hoping with that reminder that we could have much more deep conversations.
Beautiful. I would like to just finish off with a little new fact that I have just acquired in the last couple of weeks. And it's not a surprise, but it's I think it's quite transformative. And that is, if we get our teams, or we ourselves do 1 minute of conscious breathing, we can reduce people's stress levels by about between 25 and 75%.
Wow.
In it. So if you can open up with just even 1 minute of, some deep breathing, and then interject it at times where you feel that people may start to move into dysregulation.
Yep.
And don't be shy. You've seen me do that too, where I'll actually say, I can feel in the room, everybody's got really nervous, is label what you're feeling and then interject it with a self-regulation practice.
Okay.
And it will just bring everybody down. And do it for yourself with everybody too, because if you're not regulated, don't think, oh, it's just me, because it's happening in the room. So if you're feeling it spontaneously, say, you know, Emma, would you be okay if we just did a quick and own it and lead it, and it will transform the energy in the room. It's such a powerful thing to do, and it's just 1 minute.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sarah. All that information you've given us today is so helpful.
Likewise.
Just amazing.
Thank you, because having these conversations, the information comes alive, and it's all about what you do with the information at the end of the day. And you're the people that are using it, and it's so beautiful to see how you've taken the concepts and you're integrating them and you're making them yours. And that's what this is all about. So I think you're going to have an amazing day. Like, it would be hard not to. And I hope the sun shines beautifully at your amazing location. And you're just doing such great work. And your leadership team, your whole team are doing self-regulation work anyway. So none of that's new language to them. So let me know how
Wonderful. You do. We will. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Have a good rest of your week and weekend, and best of luck on Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.